Hey,
I
hey,
hope
hey.
I hope everyone's having a great day. I'm here with my daughter, Brianna Nicole, and today our discussion is going to be on relationships.
Relationship.
So why are relationships so important, daughter?
Well, I think maybe we should talk a little bit more about like dating
Okay.
because that's something that everybody does, right?
Right.
You've
Right.
dated, I've dated. It's a whole nother world out there in dating. So I think the examples I'll give will be like when I was, a teenager up until when I met my
Right.
husband. So I'm curious because I think each generation has their own kind of sets of cards when it comes to how to date, how to court. We're believers, so there's a way that we're supposed to hold ourselves when it comes to dating
Right.
and
Right.
marriage.
Right.
But I'm curious, Mom, tell me what were some of the things you learned from Grandma and Grandpa about the do's and the don'ts of dating? And how old were you when you were allowed to date?
Well, in my house, my mom was a little strict. So I was 16 when I was able to date. And so my mom, she would want to meet whoever I was dating. I was always very cautious because my parents, they would express themselves if they didn't really care for that person. So I was always selective on who I brought in front of my parents. But my mother, she was a mom, and I have to give my credit to my mom because she taught me how to be a lady,
Mhm.
and she gave me really good gold nuggets. One of her things was that if a guy was to stop his car, and say, "Hey girl, you come here," she would say, you don't be walking up to nobody car. You let them get out and come talk to you. Or if a guy honked their horn and you were in the house, my mom didn't like that either. She said, you make them get out the car and come see you. And so I really respected my mother for that. She taught me how to
Mhm.
value myself as a lady, that I was a present or a prize to those who I dated. And it wasn't to be conceited, but it was just to teach me on who I was. And I didn't have to lower my standards in order to date. And that's another thing she taught. She said, never lower your standards for guys, but you have those guys come up to your standards. And if
Mhm.
they don't meet your standards, then maybe they're not the guy for you.
Right.
And so that really, those gold nuggets, they taught me how to be a lady.
Yeah.
They taught me. And so, I credit and I thank my mom for that. Now,
Yeah.
let me ask you, how was I a mother to you when it came to dating?
To dating. Well, the other thing I wanted to say was how long have Grandma and Grandpa been married?
They have been married 53 years.
For 53 years, and then you and
Yes.
Dad have been married
33 years.
for 33 years. So I'm
Yes.
grateful that I have examples of successful marriages. And I know you would both say they weren't necessarily perfect, but you loved God and you made commitment to God in your vows.
Right.
And God has honored that. You guys have honored that and all that good stuff.
Right.
I would say you were not as strict when it came to dating
Was
as you
I
were with everything
strict?
else. I wouldn't say you were strict. I was able to date.
Really?
I wouldn't say you were strict at all. I was able to date when I was 16. But even before that, like you were saying, you always showed me how to carry myself as a lady, and I was the ugly duckling for a very long time. And so, but you never like let me, claim any of that, So I think, well, for one, I didn't have a lot of people who were interested. But even out of that, like, which could lead some people to be desperate when somebody does give them attention, I'm grateful that you had always fueled that I was beautiful, the values of like waiting for marriage to have sex or
Right.
intimacy, and like how to know how to navigate the dating game. Like when you're with someone, how to know, and your famous line was, don't put all your eggs in one basket.
Right. Right.
Dating. So when it came to how to carry myself as a lady, there were certain things I just didn't do, certain types of guys that I'm like, ooh, they're a little advanced.
So
Let
let
me
me
just
ask you a question. Let me ask you a question. So now, when you were in college,
Mhm.
when it came to dating, you know, how was that? I mean, I don't know. You're grown now. I know you're married, but how was that when you were dating in college? How did you carry yourself as a lady then, especially, if somebody wanted to invite you over? How did you carry yourself?
I think college was like around the times where I just like blossomed and I just felt confident. I felt like I looked good. You can tell me anything. And so up until that point, I wasn't really used to getting a lot of attention. I was like the butt of the joke, like, oh, Brianna, she ain't got no boyfriend. And I'm like, I don't. You ain't lying. But college was when I noticed a lot more attention. Honestly, I think I always had like a fear of God that was on me. So I never really pushed those boundaries too much. Obviously, you looking out there like, okay, but I always played my cards in a way, and I'm not saying people have to do this, but for me, what works for me was always playing my cards in a way where a guy never fully knew how I felt.
Right.
Like
All
I
your
would meet them when
cards.
they were at. So I was never like, oh my goodness. Now my girlfriends might have known, like, oh girl, we know you like him. But I had a good, and I think that's the other thing. I had a group of girlfriends that knew what my commitment to God was, knew how I was going to live my
But
life.
so before you go on, so that is an important role, is to be around like-minded
Yeah.
people that shared your views.
Some were like-minded and some weren't, but they respect, right, the God of me.
Right.
And so, but you're right, having those people, because even in high school, I have friends, we make certain pacts together and we gonna look out for each other, and then college, that's where that's really tested. Now, I can say that, and I don't want to shame nobody because there's no shame or condemnation in Christ, right?
Right.
There's people who went out there and they explored their sexuality. They explored the dating and the sleeping and all that different stuff because, you're still kind of young. You're a young adult. You feel invincible. But that wasn't my testimony.
Right.
So I think when it came to dating, I was very clear of what I wanted, what I was looking for. And I think I would have interest in guys, but I would try to fit them into a peg. And
Right.
they wasn't fit in there.
Right. But you would try.
I would try, and I'm like, Lord.
So let me ask you a question. So, when you got those red flags, like Sam, this ain't the one. Did you follow the first red flag?
So I said, I'm gonna need you to tell me in my ear, in English, in Spanish, in French, that this is not the one.
Right.
No, because I think when you're young, you have a lot of energy and you can just entertain things way past what you need to. I think that's another thing too. I remember is I think another reason why I didn't date as much is because I came to college already having a boyfriend. And at that time we were long distance.
Right.
And so I wasn't looking my freshman year. I wasn't looking my junior year. I wasn't looking because we were together and then we broke up. And then I was like, okay, let me kind of see what's around here. So.
Right. And so one thing that I think that is so important, even for young women and women, is to really value yourself. Is to really value yourself, even when you're dating. And like I say, those red flags come up. I know for myself, when I got a red flag, I might have waited for the second flag, and then I would have to say, you know what, let me stop it now. Because my emotions, I didn't want to put all my eggs in a basket and show all my cards, and my emotions were here in the basket. I held myself. And so I didn't allow myself to like people, like them, but I just wanted to fill them out. And so when that second red flag would go up, I'm like, I got to break this. And it was very hard. And very hard for me to do, but for me, I would have to just cut it because I knew that if I fell for somebody, I would fall hard. And so I had to protect myself to make sure. And then I would pray and I would ask God, if this person is not for me, please show me. Now he might show me that one time and I'm like, maybe that ain't you, God.
Right.
But when he showed me the second time, I'm like, let me cut this. Because again, I don't want to put all my feelings into this person. Because at that point, I'm out of control. And I didn't want to be out of control in a relationship.
And that's something that I admire just this day about your relationship with God is like, you will give everything up for God, no matter how much it costs, no matter how painful it would be, you'll give it up. Now, me on the other hand, it's like, I love you, Lord. And I'm like, you know, my heart, I'm trying to work through this. And when you talked about red flags, I think there was only one relationship where I saw red flags. And I think because it was, prior to that relationship, I had made a commitment to God that I was going to wait for marriage and nothing was going to get in between that. And
Right.
that relationship, I still waited for marriage, but I entertained it. I entertained a whole bunch of different stuff that I shouldn't have, and I didn't need to.
Right.
And I think because I opened myself up romantically in that way and intimacy, it made it more difficult when you hear God say like, but I'm like, and I hear from God. I mean, I know when God is telling me something, but I'm like, but God. And I told you this story before too, Mom. I remember there was a time where God had really put on my heart, like, girl, it's time to go. So either you're gonna let it go, or I'm just gonna have to take it from you and break this relationship because this is just not edifying to what I'm calling you to do. Nothing negative about the guy. He was very respectful, but God was like, this is just not, you're putting him in my place. And so I remember I went to bed and I had a dream that you came in my room and you were like, daughter, God is just putting it on my heart. You were just like, you were begging and pleading with me, leave this man alone, let him go. And so sure enough, I wake up from the dream. 3 seconds, you open up the door, and everything that was in my dream you were saying. Now, ask me if I listened to God at that point and broke up with him. I did for a second and got right back with him. And I was like, God, I'm desperate. You need to cut this tie because I can't do it myself. And then I ended up getting embarrassed in the relationship. And I guess my pride was more important than my obedience to God. But anyway, it got me too obedient. And I remember after I broke up with him, I was like, God, I never want to be back in this space again. I never want to put anybody in your place, And in that relationship, I got no pressure to cross any boundaries. It was me. It was my curiosity. It was me being like, okay. I remember even one time, I never told you this, but I'm going to tell you now.
Oh, Lord.
One time, young grown, and it could, it can minister to somebody.
Go ahead.
I'm thinking this man, I'm about to marry him. I remember I told God, whoever you have for me, because I know it wasn't him. God, whoever you have for me, move him out the way because this
Basketball player.